Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Candy Rogers. Candace Rogers, also known as Candy, was born on July 18, 1949, in Spokane, Washington. She was an only child in her family, and soon after she was born, her parents divorced. Despite this, Candy maintained a close relationship with her father. Her father lived in the same city, so she got to see him frequently. Candy was a bright and cheerful child who loved spending time outdoors with friends, exploring nature, and playing with her dog. She had a strong desire to join the Campfire Girls, a well-known organization that provided girls with opportunities to learn new skills, go on hikes, and form lasting friendships. In 1959, at the age of 9, Candy finally got the chance to join the Campfire Girls, and she was overjoyed. As a member of Campfire Girls, one of her responsibilities was to sell mints door-to-door in her neighborhood. The organization provided her with boxes of sweets to sell. On Friday, March 6th, Candy planned to sell mints after school. After returning home, having dinner, and playing with her dog, she packed 8 boxes of mints and set out around 4 p.m. Candy had a plan to go door-to-door in her neighborhood, offering sweets to her neighbors. To avoid duplicating efforts, she and the other girls in the area had assigned specific streets to visit. However, when Candy failed to return home by 6 p.m. as expected, her mom started to worry. As night began to fall, her mom and grandfather set out to search for her, scouring the neighborhood streets but finding no sign of Candy. Soon, some family friends and neighbors joined the search, but despite their combined efforts, no one could find any trace of Candy. At this point, her mom decided to call the police for assistance. By the time the police arrived, the streets were dark, and something might have happened to Candy. The police began their investigation by questioning the neighbors and soon discovered that Candy had only sold 1 box of mints, suggesting that something might have occurred shortly after she left her house. A resident reported suggesting that something might have occurred shortly after she left her house. A resident reported seeing a girl matching Candy's description on a nearby street around 6:30 p.m. This was unusual, as Candy's mother had already begun searching for her by that time. Candy's grandfather had a strange experience as well, which occurred when he searched for her on the very same street. He narrowly avoided being hit by a speeding green 1953 Ford, which struck the curb. Unfortunately, he couldn't see the license plate number. The police issued a detailed description of the vehicle and initiated a search, but so far they have not been able to locate it. Later, around 9 p.m., several mint boxes were found scattered along the road near a bridge. These boxes belonged to Candy, increasing concerns for her safety. The police focused their search in this area, thoroughly searching both riverbanks and a small wooded area on either side. Despite an all-night search, Candy was not found. By morning, news of her disappearance had spread through local newspapers. And soon the case was being covered by statewide media. In 1959, child disappearances near their homes were unusual because it happened extremely rarely. The townspeople were extremely worried about this. To resolve this alarming situation, police have stepped up search work. They added mounted police, all-terrain vehicles and helicopters and military personnel to thoroughly search the area. In addition, over 1,000 volunteers joined in the massive search from both local areas and nearby cities. It became one of the most extensive search operations at the time. Despite these efforts, they still could not locate Candy. Another incident that added to the trauma of the town was when a search helicopter struck power lines and crashed. As a result, 3 of its crew members died. However, police remained dedicated and relentless, operating 24/7 on this case. With so many investigations open, officers still tried everything. Throughout the case, nearly 750 initial leads turned up, officers closely inspected every detail. Regrettably, these investigative trails did not help discover any definitive proof about Candice. 2 weeks after Candice's disappearance, 2 military personnel from a local base went on a hunting trip in the woods west of Spokane. They stumbled upon children's shoes on the ground, which immediately reminded them of Candice's case. Since many military members had been involved in the search, they were familiar with the details of her disappearance. The military personnel reported their discovery to the police, who then showed the shoes to Candice's grandfather for identification. He confirmed that the shoes belonged to his granddaughter. The police quickly launched a search operation in the woods. Within minutes, an officer spotted a foot protruding from the bushes and discovered Candice's body. She was found lying in the underbrush, covered with pine branches. A medical examination revealed the cause of death was strangulation, also found marks on Candice's hands and feet, indicating that she had been bound. Although no ropes were found near the body. Furthermore, the medical experts concluded that Candy had been sexually abused. During the investigation, the police found a green car seat cover near the crime scene. Additionally, a small purple stain was discovered on Candice's clothing, which smelled like grape-flavored chewing gum. However, the police were unable to establish any connection between the stain and the crime. The police searched for any possible clues to find the killer. They examined incoming tips and investigated hundreds of individuals, including neighbors, suspicious characters, and previously convicted criminals. Their attention eventually turned to a 50-year-old man named Alfred Braves. Alfred became a suspect due to unusual circumstances. He took his own life on the same day Candice's body was discovered, in his car, near where the mint boxes were found. He also lived close to Candice's home. When police found Alfred's body, they discovered a rope and woman's hair pins in his car. After searching Alfred's house, police found numerous newspapers about sexual crimes against women and girls. They also learned that several women had accused him of harassment, and his wife suspected him of Candice's murder. However, investigators were unable to find any evidence directly linking Alfred to Candice's murder. Despite their reluctance, detectives had to eliminate him from the suspect list, as they did not have enough evidence to prove his guilt. As a result, they began investigating other suspects. Several months after the murder, the police had compiled an extensive list of suspects, but despite their diligent efforts, the investigation has made no new progress. Later, the investigators turned their attention to a new suspect, a serial killer named Hugh Morse. Hugh was arrested in 1961 for a string of crimes, and 2 factors made him a person of interest in Candice's case. Firstly, he was known for constantly chewing grape-flavored gum, which was similar to a substance found on Candice's clothing. Additionally, Hugh had killed 2 women in Spokane just a few months after Candice's death. Hugh's history of violence was also a concern. His first arrest was for assaulting a woman, but he received no serious consequences, merely being discharged from the army, where he was serving at the time. Hugh committed a string of robberies in Los Angeles, but only served 6 months in jail. After his release, he lured 2 8-year-old girls to a secluded area with the promise of ice cream and then sexually assaulted them. Despite being arrested again, he managed to avoid prison time. A medical commission evaluated him and deemed him a sexual psychopath, leading to his placement in a mental health facility. 2 years later, doctors believed he was cured and released him from the facility. Hugh then moved to Spokane, where he began spying on women through their windows. In November 1959, Hugh broke into the home of a 28-year-old woman, assaulted her, and ultimately killed her. 10 months later, he entered the residence of a 69-year-old woman and repeated the same violent actions. A month after that, he attacked another woman, stabbing her multiple times, but she survived the assault. Hugh continued to travel from city to city, committing numerous crimes, including attacking women and girls with a knife, sexually assaulting them, and killing 2 more victims. His crimes eventually caught the attention of the FBI, and he was added to the list of the country's 10 most wanted criminals. He was eventually captured and sentenced to multiple life terms in prison. While serving his sentence, Hugh attempted to take his own life, but was saved by the prison guards and continued to serve out his sentence. Detectives investigating Candy's case visited him in prison multiple times, but he consistently denied any involvement in the crime. A polygraph test was also administered, which suggested he was telling the truth. However, lie detector test results are not considered reliable because their accuracy is only relative. Despite the lack of evidence, but investigators initially considered Hugh a primary suspect. Due to his background and the fact that he lived in Spokane at the time of the murder. However, he continued to deny any involvement and police were unable to find any evidence to prove his involvement in the crime. The investigation then shifted focus to another suspect, 49-year-old Howard Barnett. He was arrested in February 1960 on suspicion of molesting a minor girl. Before taking his own life in his cell at the Spokane police station, Barnett wrote a cryptic message in his own blood on the wall, stating, "I have a sin before the Lord." Detectives then began investigating Barnett's potential involvement in the crime, but they were once again unable to find any evidence of his guilt. Howard remained a primary suspect in the case due to his proximity to Candy's residence. Despite years of investigation, police continued to follow new leads and examine other potential suspects. A woman eventually came forward claiming to have seen a green car following Candy on the day she disappeared. Police refocused on locating the vehicle, but this lead ultimately yielded no results. It was notable that the woman waited many years to share this information. The case was reopened at various times, but each time investigators reached a dead end. Throughout the investigation, police not only had to pursue new leads but also had to verify the validity of confessions. 13 people gave false confessions to the crime. However, none of them were able to provide specific details that only the actual killer would have known. Instead, they often repeated details previously reported in the media. High-profile cases often exhibit unexpected and surprising behaviors, such as false confessions. In the case of Candy's murder, numerous detectives worked on the case over time, but none were able to solve it. This crime stood out as one of the most prominent and mysterious in the city and state. Before the murder, parents felt safe letting their children play outside, but the case led many to reconsider their views on safety. Years later, in the early 2000s, the case was reopened, and a new detective decided to use modern technologies to re-examine the evidence. Fortunately, the police had carefully collected and preserved the evidence in 1959, including a sample of male semen on Candy's clothing. Despite being stored for decades, experts were able to re-examine the sample, although it extremely challenging due to its age. After a lengthy investigation, experts finally extracted a DNA profile from the evidence and uploaded it to the FBI database. However, a search of the database yielded no matches. Further cross-examination of the profile with numerous suspect samples also proved unsuccessful. For many years, suspicion fell on Hugh Morse, but forensic evidence revealed no link between him and the crime. This lack of progress brought the investigation to a halt once again. Although the police had the killer's DNA, they struggled to identify the perpetrator. In 2021, a new detective reopened the case and decided to employ a new approach: genetic genealogy. This innovative method had already solved numerous cold cases and offered hope for finally resolving the standing mystery surrounding Candy's murder. The detective reached out to multiple labs that specialized in this type of analysis but was met with disappointment once again. To use this method, experts needed the original DNA sample, which was a challenge. Several labs attempted to work with the semen sample, but each concluded that it had degraded too much, making it impossible to extract the necessary information. The detective then consulted the final lab, which led to a long-awaited important discovery. With the help of state-of-the-art tools, the experts were able to successfully analyze the sample and obtain the perpetrator's DNA profile. This profile is then uploaded to a genealogy database to begin searching for the DNA owner's relatives. After a thorough investigation involving thousands of individuals, researchers pinpointed one family as the likely source of the DNA sample. They discovered that the DNA probably belonged to one of 3 brothers, all of whom had passed away. However, the team found that one brother had a daughter, and the police reached out to her for assistance. The daughter was shocked by the possibility that her father might be the killer, but she immediately agreed to help. She provided a DNA sample, proving that she was closely related to the person whose semen was found on Candy's clothing. With this new information, detectives obtained a court order to exhume her father's remains. A DNA profile extracted from the remains revealed a complete match with the DNA found on Candy's clothing, identifying the killer as John Hoff, 62 years after the crime. Hoff had never been a suspect despite hundreds of others being investigated over the years. Detectives investigating Hoff's biography uncovered his involvement in multiple crimes. At the time of Candy's murder, Hoff was 20 years old and lived close to her house, less than a mile away. He was also a soldier in the army, stationed at a nearby base, where Candy's body was found. 2 years after the murder, Hoff attacked another woman, binding and sexually assaulting her before attempting to kill her. However, the woman survived the attack. Following his arrest, Hoff received a 6-month prison sentence and was dishonorably discharged from the army. After his release, Hoff started a family, having 2 sons and 2 daughters, and he living an ordinary life. He changed jobs several times and at one point, suffered a severe chemical burn to his face while working at a food packaging plant, leaving a scar to his face. Hoff's life ended in June 1970, 11 years after Candy's murder, when he took his own life without leaving a note. Further investigation revealed that Candy might have known Hoff, as she was friends with his 10-year-old sister at the time. Years later, Hoff's sister told detectives that she had cried in Hoff's arms after Candy's murder, unaware that he was the one responsible for Candy's death. Candy's parents did not live to see the day when the killer's identity was revealed. Her mother passed away in 2006, and her father had taken his own life in 1963, 4 years after the tragedy. The reason behind his death remains a mystery. There is speculation that he was unable to cope with the loss of his daughter. Despite this, the case was eventually solved, marking one of the longest investigations in history, spanning over 62 years and involving multiple detectives across different generations. At the press conference, where the killer's name was announced, only one officer who had worked on the case in 1959 was present. He expressed gratitude for having lived long enough to learn the truth. Hoff's daughter initially struggled to accept that her father had committed such a horrific crime. However, she eventually came to terms with the fact, referring to her father as a monster who took an innocent life. She expressed regret that he was not held accountable during his lifetime. A chilling coincidence is that Hoff took his own life when his daughter was 9 years old. The same age as Candy was when she was killed.